Yeah, South Carolina, they had a learning lesson, especially when it comes to when you're struggling, when the game is close, you have to feed the hot hand. And I loved what I saw from Camila Cardoso down the stretch because she demanded the ball. Now watch this right here. She is big, turnaround, drop step. She could not be stopped. Again, 10 for 12 from the field for 22 points. Watch how she fights on these rebounds. She was the one that kept them in it. She was the one that was poised. We talk about missing the first game of the tournament. More importantly, she said, hey, that was an emotional moment for me, and I think that really recentered her to make the most of every possession. Check this out, though. In the second half, later on, watch her call for the ball because if you see this play right here coming up, it was crazy. She had not had a field goal after being so good. She throws the ball out there, she demands, she reposts, she calls for the ball. Now, mind you, this was a turnover, but this taught her teammates not only to call a timeout and say, y'all, we have to find her easier. And next thing you know, the next possession down, she scores. So again, 10 for 12. Typically, when you shoot that well, it should be what? 20 for 24. I think they could have made their lives easier if they found her down the stretch, but she delivered when they needed it the most.
Yeah, let me tell you something for nothing. Not getting Camila the ball in the fourth quarter, she only had a couple of field goal attempts, is almost as egregious as the nose ring debacle with Hannah Hidalgo in the first game. It's almost as bad as that because the nose ring, we're not going to talk about it, but Hannah having to set up for her nose ring was ridiculous to me. Not getting Camila the ball when she's 10 of 12 from the field. You said it. 10 of 12, it should never be that great because you should keep getting her the ball. If she's 10 of 12, she should end up
10 for
15
16.
of 20, 20 of 24. Like 10 of 12 is so good for her to only have 12 shots. That's a big lesson for South Carolina.
And going into the game, the X factor, Coach Dawn Staley said it, was Camila Cardoso.
She did.
And so I think this was a learning lesson. Like, she is a defensive player of the year for the SEC, but also she's the easiest bucket for them.
But I will say moving forward, because now what do we know? It's going to be Oregon State and South Carolina, right? What does Oregon State do really well? They knock down threes. I've said in the past, for teams to compete with South Carolina, the difference at the three-point line needs to be 12 to 15 points. You have to have an advantage of 12 to 15 points from beyond the arc. So Oregon State, their execution, moving the ball, they've got to hit threes.
Look, kudos to Indiana because coming in, this is a team that led the nation in field goal percentage, and it's hard to trade twos for threes, and they delivered. They had 13 made threes to South Carolina's, I believe, 8. So that was a differentiator, especially when Mackenzie Holmes was struggling to score inside early on in the game.
But we always talk about that with South Carolina. That's the problem. That's why it's so hard to beat them. They've got like 4 levels of defense in terms of like if the shots aren't falling, which they weren't today, then there's a million different things they can do. There was also something that stood out to you, Drea, that we want to show as well, and that's in that final timeout. Dawn Staley doing what?
Yeah, I thought it was really special. You know, Coach Staley was talking to her players, and it was a little bit before that part of the huddle, and Sanaya and Raven were both talking in the huddle, and you could see Coach Staley just looking at them and listening to them and talking about, they're telling her what they're experiencing on the floor, and for her to listen to them for just a second and then say her piece, it's just a small thing that I remember as a player would have meant a lot to me.
Yes, an underrated key aspect of coaching. You're out there, you're battling. She did not call a timeout. Finally, the timeout comes, and she says, tell me what you're doing. Tell me how you're feeling. She breathes life into her players, and what did that amount in? A Raven Johnson clutch 3.
That's what I'm talking about, and then it kind of goes back to, this is so fun.
Oh, Cardoso? You know that
Camila. So when the game is on the line, when they're at the
SEC tournament,
game is on the line, and what does Coach Staley do? She breathes confidence into Camila Cardoso, who hasn't hit 3 all season. In the game for her to step in and knock down that 3. And then what does she drop? You have to think about all the players that have hit a 3 in this game for South Carolina. What does Coach Staley do? She puts Raven Johnson on the side with Camila because she knows they're going to double team and lets Camila kick it back out to Raven, and Raven Johnson has the confidence to shoot the shot. I'm telling you, the coaching is a separator. Like the way that you breathe life into your team, the way you know who needs to get the ball, the way you know who is capable of what and who's going to flow this game. Raven was 3 for 3 from beyond the arc. She puts Raven on that side. She knocks down the 3. There are just so many levels to having success as a team. It showed today.
And Camila being unselfish in that moment. She was someone that was scoring at will, but said, hey, you know what? We'll kick it out to the shooter. That's the right way to play basketball.